This is a behavior support plan for Henry Baker, who is a 15-year-old male with autism spectrum disorder, by Carol Lucas. Henry is a 15-year-old male with autism spectrum disorder. He is currently receiving in-home ABA therapy. The staff is currently working on increasing Henry's functional living skills in order to increase independence. Henry currently is working on developing his imitation skills along with his communication skills. His communication skills are limited. He is able to request using pictures of objects that he needs or wants with prompts, and he will frequently guide others or pull others towards items he wants. Some potential reinforcing items for Henry that are social are high fives, favorite TV shows with family, and chase. Some preferred edible items or tangible items include Cheetos, chocolate kisses, and iPad. Some sensory items include putty, Play-Doh, stress balls, and sensory balls. The target behavior that we will look at in this behavior support plan is folding a t-shirt. Henry had 0% of steps independent for folding the t-shirt during baseline conditions. Goals of treatment. The goal is to increase Henry's accuracy and independence with folding a t-shirt. The short-term goal is that Henry will be able to fold a t-shirt with 50% of steps independent within 10 consecutive therapy sessions. His long-term goal is that he will be able to fold a t-shirt with 100% of steps independent for 3 consecutive therapy sessions. Some antecedent manipulations to think about when you're training this skill is to set up the environment for success. So make sure you minimize any distractions that are around Henry, and make sure the area in which you're folding the shirt are clear of obstacles. So make sure the table or the bed, whatever surface you may use, is clear and ready to be worked on. Strategies for encouraging appropriate behavior. We will be using positive reinforcement. One example is to provide positive praise when Henry engages in the appropriate steps. Also provide a preferred edible along with positive praise for when Henry independently completes a step. Last, provide praise when the t-shirt is folded and the terminal outcome is reached, so that Henry comes in contact with the natural reinforcer of having the shirt folded completely. Strategies for increasing target behavior. We will be using a forward chaining procedure. So first, what is a behavior chain? It is a sequence of discrete responses or steps that are put together to produce a terminal outcome. Next, what is forward chaining? Responses are taught in the natural occurring order. Reinforcement is delivered for the first step in the chain, then the trainer completes the following steps in the sequence. The learner has to be independent with the first sequential step before starting to reinforce the next step in the chain. Why are we using forward chaining? Forward chaining procedure teaches the behavior in the natural occurring order. Also, it allows the individual to receive reinforcement from the trainer with more immediacy compared to backwards chaining or total task chaining. We will be using a task analysis in order to break down the steps of folding the t-shirt. And the steps include first, straightening out the shirt on a surface, for example, a bed or a tabletop. Second, grasp the shirt near the sleeve and the bottom of the shirt on the same side and fold to the other side, making sure it lines up symmetrical. 3, fold the sleeves in and take the bottom, then 4, take the bottom half of the shirt and fold it up. The last step, number 5, is to straighten out any wrinkles. How to complete this procedure. First, you have to state the discriminative stimulus, which is let's fold the shirt. We want to train the first step initially, so that would be straightening out the shirt on a surface. We will use a prompting hierarchy, as you can see here, from most intrusive to less intrusive. So at the top, with most intrusive, includes a full physical prompt where you hand over hand through the target response. Next is a partial physical prompt where you guide the hands to complete the response, then release at some point before the complete response occurs. Next is a gestural prompt, pointing to where the learner's hands should go to complete the targeted response. And then eventually hopefully fading away to an independent response where the learner emits the response on his own. Reinforce with vocal and or social praise. For example, good job folding or high five for the target response that you prompted. Only reinforce with an edible and vocal and or social praise for the target response that is completed independently by the learner. You will use the prompting hierarchy to train each step. So you'll start out with the full physical prompt for 2 trials in a row, then move to a partial physical prompt. Complete a partial physical prompt for 2 trials in a row, and then move to a gestural prompt. Complete the gestural prompt for 2 trials, and then test to see if the learner has an independent response. You will then provide full physical prompts for all of the remaining or following steps in the chain. For example, if you're training step 1, record the appropriate prompt used, then steps 2 through 6, all will be full physical prompts. Another example is if you're training step 2, record the appropriate prompt used, then steps 3 through 6 will be full physical prompts. When the terminal outcome is completed, in other words, the shirt is folded, provide vocal praise showing that the task is finished. For example, good job, shirt is folded. When the learner completes 3 independent trials consecutively, then move on to training the next step in the sequence. Remember to withhold reinforcement for previously mastered steps. For example, if step 1 is mastered, you are now training step 2. Do not reinforce step 1, but wait for an independent response for step 2 to give vocal praise and an edible reinforcer. We do not want to create prompt dependency by providing praise after each independent response that is not currently being trained and was already mastered. Your data collection sheet will be of the task analysis where you will record the prompt used from the prompting hierarchy below. So either a full physical prompt, partial physical prompt, gesture prompt, or independent. Next, we're going to go over some examples with some video demonstrations and go step by step with filling it out in the data collection sheet so that you're aware of exactly how to do this. Step 1, we'll look at training step number 1, so straightening out the shirt on a surface. So you want to start out with the full physical prompt, then give vocal praise for completing that step with the prompt, and then continue steps using full physical prompt and giving praise at the terminal outcome of folded shirt. You want to complete this for 2 trials with the same procedure. Now let's look at a video and then we'll take data on the data sheet.
Let's fold the shirt. Good job. Good. That looks great.
So for the data collection, for example 1, as you can see, for trial 1 and trial 2 will both be full physical prompts, as you saw in that video. You saw me start out with the full physical prompt for straightening out the shirt, provide that vocal praise, and then all the remaining steps, as you saw, were completed using full physical prompts. And you can see in this data sheet that all the remaining prompts for the steps 2 through 5 are all full physical prompts. Let's look at the next example, which is training step 1. Now that you've completed 2 trials of full physical prompts, we can fade to a partial physical prompt. Reinforce using vocal praise after completion of step 1 using the partial physical prompts, and then continue the remaining steps using full physical prompts, giving praise at the terminal outcome, the folded shirt. And you want to complete this for 2 trials using the same procedure that we just went over. Now we will look at a video demonstration of what this partial physical prompt would look like for the first step in the sequence.
Let's fold our shirt. Good job straightening it out. Nice work. Nice. High five.
As you can see in the video, the partial physical prompt involves kind of guiding their hands, but then releasing before the response is completed. So just guiding his hands to where they need to be, and then releasing your physical prompt right there. So that is an example of partial physical prompt. Now let's look at what data collection would look like on the task analysis data collection sheet. So we did our 2 full physical prompts for 2 trials, and now we were able to fade to a partial physical prompt, and he was receptive to it. So we'll do a partial physical prompt as you saw, and then full physical prompts all the way through the remaining steps, and then do the partial physical prompt again for the next trial, and full physical steps all the way through the remaining steps. Next, we'll look at fading to a gesture prompt. So for our third example, for training step 1, which is straightening out the shirt, we've completed 2 trials of the partial physical prompts, and now we can fade to gesture prompts. You want to reinforce using vocal praise after completion of step 1 using your gesture prompts, and continue the remaining steps using full physical prompts, giving praise at the terminal outcome. And you will do this for 2 trials before testing for an independent response. Now let's look at what that gesture prompt looks like with completing the task analysis.
Let's fold the shirt. There we go. Nice and straight. Good job. Good work.
So next, let's look at the data collection for the demonstration we just saw. So we had a gesture prompt, and then followed with the remaining steps using full physical prompt. And since I'm here, as you can see, it's done for 2 trials, then we can try to fade and test for that independent response for step 1. So the next example, number 4, you've completed 2 trials of gesture prompts. Now it's time to test for the independent response. If Henry is independent, reinforce with praise and an edible. Continue the remaining steps using that full physical prompts as we have done in those previous trials. Test independence for 2 more trials. If Henry is independent for 3 trials in a row, move on to training the next step in the sequence. So go from training step 1. If he's mastered it, move to training step 2.
Let's fold our shirt. Perfect. Good job. Awesome.
So now you can see we have 3 consecutive trials where he's independent. So that is mastered, and then you can move on to the second step. So let's look at a what if situation. So say you do the full physical prompt for 2 trials in a row, and then you try to move to the partial physical prompt and fade away, and the learner does not respond to the partial physical prompt. So in that case, if the learner does not respond to the partial physical prompt within 3 to 5 seconds, go back to the full physical prompt for 2 more trials before moving on down the prompting hierarchy again. So this same procedure can be instated for each time you try to fade. So if you try to fade from a partial physical prompt to a gesture and they're not responding to that gesture prompt within 3 to 5 seconds, again, go back to that the one above in the hierarchy that is more intrusive, which would be the partial physical prompt, for 2 more trials, and then move back down to gesture prompt. So complete this procedure if Henry were to not be responsive to the prompt that you faded to. Let's look at this for data collection. So say, for instance, you do the full physical prompt for 2 trials, and then you try to fade to the partial physical prompt for trial 3, but Henry's not responsive in that 3 to 5 second time period. So then we're going to go back to the full physical prompt, and then we're going to do the full physical prompt again for trial 4, and then for trial 5, we're going to try to fade to the partial physical prompt again. So let's look at this portion of the behavior support plan again. So you want to withhold reinforcement for previously mastered steps. So for example, if step 1 is mastered and you're now working on training step 2, do not reinforce step 1, but wait for the independent response for step 2 to give that vocal praise and edible reinforcer again. This is because we don't want to create prompt dependency by providing praise after each step that is not currently being trained and has already been mastered in the past. So next you're going to see a video example of step 1 was already mastered by the learner, and we're working on training step 2. And you'll see in the video that I will not give reinforcement for completing step 1 since he's already mastered that. But when he is independent with step 2, that's when I provide that reinforcement.
Let's fold the shirt. Great folding. Good job. Great. Awesome.
Let's look at some other information to be mindful of when working on this folding shirt task. So we want to avoid vocal prompts. Use the prompts that are given on the prompting hierarchy. Vocal prompts can be considered more intrusive and can shape prompt dependency, and sometimes can be harder to fade. So we need to keep this in mind because a vocal prompt may become a discriminative stimulus for the step or response that you want to occur. So for example, if the step is to fold the sleeves in and you say fold the sleeves in, the learner might become accustomed to understanding that, oh, she's going to tell me to fold the sleeves in, and it's going to act as that SD for that step or response. So instead of using vocal prompts, use specific praise. So for example, nice job straightening the shirt, or nice folding. That way you're still giving some language input for Henry, and you're also labeling the things that he's doing. We want to avoid model prompts as well, since Henry's imitation skills are not well developed just yet, and he struggles to observe others. Therefore, we will avoid these model prompts when training skills until his imitation skills have grown. That is everything on the task analysis for folding a t-shirt for Henry. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask, and I will be able to answer any questions you have. Thank you very much.